Is the Shilajit you're taking actually lab tested? Have you actually viewed the lab test results yourself? What is considered a good lab test result? Does the brand you're taking test for fulvic acid? Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be exposing the lab test results of most common Shilajit brands found within Australia, both online and in store. Shilajit is trending, and it's for a good reason. It's been used for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine and is now proven by over 76 scientific studies to improve energy on a cellular level, mental clarity, improve testosterone in men, regulate mood, improve muscle mass, and many more benefits. But how many brands and to what degree is this Shilajit actually pure and potent? You'll be surprised by what we're about to uncover. We will be anonymously critiquing the top brands found in an organic Google search and the top brands found on the shelf within Australian stores. We're going to be honing in on two key factors here. One, trace amounts of heavy metals. As it's naturally occurring and is not tampered with by humans before harvesting, trace amounts of heavy metals can be found in most Shilajit brands. To expect zero heavy metals would almost negate Shilajit existing in the first place. However, despite being found only in trace amounts, we want the smallest amount of heavy metal contamination possible. That's the first thing we'll be looking for. The second thing is fulvic acid. Fulvic acid is the primary constituent in Shilajit that actually pushes the minerals found in Shilajit into the cell, and funnily enough, it facilitates cellular detoxification, which actually, to a degree, negates the presence of heavy metals in the Shilajit as it helps push them out of the body. So we want the lowest amount of contamination possible and the highest amount of fulvic acid to provide the benefits and to offset the negatives of any trace heavy metal contamination. Let's get into it. We're going to start off by looking at Celsius Medicinals premium grade Shilajit resin. This is the cleanest and most pure that you can find in Australia, and we're going to be using this as a benchmark to compare other brands to. So here we are, we're on their page right now. Lab test results, here we go. So let's have a look. Analytical report. First up, you can see fulvic acid. Here we are. So 76.34 grams per 100 grams. Fulvic acid is generally measured as a percentage of the total weight of the Shilajit. So Celsius Medicinals Shilajit comes in at 76.34% fulvic acid. Anything above 70% indicates a strong, authentic, undiluted Shilajit, fulvic acid being the main constituent. Anything below 70%, and you'll be surprised at the level in some brands that we're about to find, is that the Shilajit has fillers present. The fillers offsetting the cost and making it cheaper for the manufacturer. Or two, that they've sourced from a poor location where the Shilajit isn't that potent in the first place. So 76% fulvic acid for Celsius Medicinals. Now we're going to go look down at the heavy metal contaminants here. As you can see, the four metals we'll be looking at are arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. These are measured in parts per million, as you'll see milligrams per kilo. Milligrams per kilo converts exactly to parts per million. So from the top down, arsenic 0.6 parts per million. That's quite low. Cadmium 0.02. This is the most minute trace amounts. Hypothetically, if you were to take a kilogram of Shilajit resin from this brand, you would literally get 0.02 milligrams of cadmium from eating a kilo of Shilajit. As most of you probably know, we only want to supplement half to a gram at a time, as it's concentrated and potent when we don't need to supplement anymore. Moving on, lead 0.17 parts per million. Very low, as you're about to find out. And lastly, mercury, so less than 0.01. Again, it's almost not there. Because Shilajit is a naturally occurring substance, as I said, it will be found in trace amounts. The bar has been set. Let's see how other top brands in Australia compare to this brand we've just analysed. Here we are, we have the browser open now. We have tabs open for 4 brands commonly found on the shelf in Australia and 4 other brands that come up at the top of an organic Google search. We've blurred out the specific brands here as the intention is not to call them out, but simply to shed some light on the quality of Shilajit that you're taking. Here we go, brand number 1. New lab results, they've got that readily available at the top, well done. Shilajit resin, here we go. Okay, starting up the top. Arsenic, 0.8, and these are all measured in parts per million as well. Okay, slightly higher than our first brand. It's still a very trace amount. Like I said earlier, we want to keep this as low as possible. Cadmium, 0.17. This is almost 9 times higher than the first brand we looked at. Moving on to lead, 1.3. 1.3 parts per million. That is actually quite high. Let's pull the calculator out here. 1.3 divided by 0.17, which was our first brand. So brand number 1 we're looking at, the lead content is 7.5 times higher than Celsius Medicinals Shilajit. Moving on to mercury, 0.01 parts per million. Okay, that's quite low. So looking at the heavy metals, arsenic is okay, cadmium's a lot higher than our first brand, lead is far too high, this is not acceptable. Mercury is really low, ticks that box. Now it appears they haven't tested for fulvic acid. This could indicate one of two things. One, they're not aware that fulvic acid is the main constituent and needs to be tested for to verify the potency of the Shilajit. Or two, the Shilajit contains low amounts of fulvic acid and they're intentionally not showing it in their lab reports. Brand number 1, the heavy metals are above average, especially the lead, and there's no fulvic acid. Moving on to brand number 2. Here we are on brand number 2's page. See if we can find the lab test results. Here we go. Okay, so we found brand number 2's lab test results. They've tested for arsenic, cadmium, mercury, lead. Fantastic. I'm not seeing any fulvic acid again on brand number 2. That's very interesting. Let's look at their heavy metal analysis. All in parts per million. Arsenic, 0.3. That's better than the first 2 brands. Well done. Cadmium, 0.07. Okay, much better than brand number 2, but slightly higher than brand number 1. Celsius Medicinals, the first one we looked at, will be the brand we're comparing all others to. So when I say brand number 1, it's the first brand that we compared to their Shilajit. Moving on to mercury, 0.01, fantastic. Lead, 0.68. So it's roughly 4 times higher than Celsius Medicinals Shilajit again. And no, it appears there is not any fulvic acid in this testing. Again, they're not aware that it's something that needs to be tested for, or they're obscuring the results. Although it does appear on their product page that they're aware that fulvic acid needs to be tested for. I'm not sure why it's not in their lab tests. Moving on to brand number 3. Okay, here we are on brand number 3's page, lab reports right up the top. For what it's worth, the first 3 brands we're comparing have all made their lab tests readily accessible. This is a good sign of trust and authenticity, as they're not obscuring and making their lab tests hard to find. The first thing to note about brand number 3, as we look at it here, is that the lab test was undertaken on the 27th of May 2019. So this lab test is over 4 years old. It's important the lab tests are up to date. A brand's lab test frequency does not need to be once a week, but it needs to be more frequent than once every 4 years to build trust and credibility with its customer base. Here we go. So we've got the 4 heavy metals. Arsenic, less than 0.1. Okay, that's lower than all the brands we've looked at so far. Cadmium, less than 0.1. The Celsius Medicinals was 0.02. Lead, less than 0.1. That's fantastic. Mercury, less than 0.1. Mercury is one of the ones that we want to be most particular about. So this is less than 0.1 for brand number 3 here. Most of the brands we've looked at so far, including Celsius Medicinals, are less than 0.01 parts per million mercury. We want that to be as low as possible. Some brands say that their amount is lower than a certain amount, but it could be like that amount or it could be way lower. So it doesn't give us definitive information. However, it's still quite low in the scheme of things. And it appears there's no fulvic acid for this brand again. So brand number 3, heavy metals are quite good compared to all the brands we've looked at so far. Again, they haven't tested for fulvic acid. So we may not be getting that added detoxification boost in our Shilajit from the fulvic acid to remove any trace amounts of heavy metals that are there. I'm not sure why these brands are not testing for fulvic acid, as it literally is the primary ingredient providing most of the benefits. Moving on to brand number 4. Here we are on brand number 4's page. Lots of reviews, that's a good sign. Where are their lab tests? Nothing so far. I'm not going to name this brand, but this brand is commonly revered as the purest and most potent brand on the shelf. Okay, what's interesting to note is there are no lab tests available on their page. That's quite unusual. As I said before, Shilajit is an organic compound that's naturally occurring. There will be trace amounts of heavy metals in it, no matter which brand that you get. This brand being one of the industry front runners, this does beg the question as to the purity and potency of their product. So brand number 4 has no lab test results that I can find today. Moving on to the brands that are found online. Here is brand number 1, the top search result minus Google ads that came up in an organic Google search. We're on Amazon, $55 for 30 grams. That's quite questionable. Shilajit is expensive, it's difficult to access and difficult to harvest. If the brand that you're taking is significantly lower than most other brands, they're probably cutting corners in terms of using fillers or sourcing from an inauthentic location, which will have less potency and potentially more contamination. Seeing what we can find here, naturally rich in fulvic acid, so they're aware that that's important. Have they got a lab test? Scrolling down their page, it says not mixed with other elements. That's a good sign. We want to be able to verify this. Okay, so we've gone through the whole page on Amazon for brand number 1. We'll call it brand number 5, but this is the first of the ones in a Google search. No lab testing. Again, it could be great quality, it could be horrible quality, we don't know. Because of the potential presence of heavy metals, we want to know, which is why we need to verify a brand's lab testing. Moving on to brand number 6, this is the second that came up in an organic search on Google. 100% pure Himalayan Shilajit resin, fantastic. Okay, so this isn't a lab test, but they have said here, rich source for fulvic acid, 37% naturally occurring. Okay, that's not a rich source compared to what it should be. However, it is there and they've actually provided us with a number. I'd personally like to see that on a lab test so I know it's a reputable number. We're still on brand number 5. Here we go, tested safe for heavy metals lab reports here. This is brand number 6's lab test results. Okay, this brand, like Celsius Medicinals, has done their lab testing through a Eurofins approved lab. This is a big thumbs up for authenticity. Fulvic acid, 37.09%. Okay, so that number did check out from before. That's verified. So far, this is the only brand that's actually provided fulvic acid in their lab testing, aside from the first brand, Celsius Medicinal, which had 76.34% fulvic acid. So they've tested for it, well done. Moving on to heavy metals. Arsenic, 0.68, could be better. It's still a small amount in the scheme of things. Mercury, less than 0.01, that's fantastic. Lead, 0.35 parts per million. Okay, so it's roughly double Celsius Medicinals. However, it's still lower than most of the other brands we've looked at today. Cadmium, 0.02, on par with Celsius Medicinals. This brand is probably the best one that we've looked at so far in terms of the lowest amount of contamination but the highest amount of potency from the fulvic acid. However, the fulvic acid is still quite low and the lead is above the Celsius Medicinals level. Moving on to brand number 7. Here we are on brand number 7's page. This is the third brand that came up in an organic search. We're going to their product page. Something that I've noticed is a lot of these brands are produced in the Gilgit-Baltistan region in Pakistan. There's been a lot of brands that are sourced from this specific region, which begs the question, are they all using the same supplier? Large-scale commercial Shilajit harvesting operations generally can involve the use of dynamite and other methods of harvesting that are going to add additional contamination into the Shilajit. So this is something to be aware of. As a side note, Celsius Medicinals premium grade Shilajit is sourced from a proprietary area, meaning that no other brands have access to their harvesting area. This means that it's most likely, and it's verified in their lab test results, much cleaner. So far, they're the front runners in our lab test results. Back to brand number 7. They say lab tested. Let's see if we can find their lab test results. So we've gone through all of brand number 7's page and we cannot find any third-party lab testing for this brand. Again, it could be okay, but we want to be able to validate that. We do not want excess heavy metals and we want as much potency as possible. Last but not least, brand number 8. Okay, we're on brand number 8's page. It looks good. Let's see if they have their lab testing here. Okay, let's have a look. There's the brand, that's all blurred out. Okay, here we go. The 3 columns on the right-hand side look like different Shilajits they've got sourced from different locations. We're going to look at column 1. That was the product page we were on. First up, arsenic, milligrams per kilo. We're in parts per million. Less than 4. Okay. Celsius Medicinals Shilajit was 0.61 parts per million arsenic. Less than 4 could mean less than that, or it could mean 3.9. That's much higher. If it is the case, it's unfortunate they haven't made the testing limit lower so we can validate the exact quantity. Moving on to cadmium, less than 0.4. Okay, considering Celsius Medicinals was 0.02, I haven't hit the nail on the head to validate the exact quantity of cadmium here. It could be high, it could be low. Lead, less than 1 part per million. 1 part per million is far too much. 0.17 was Celsius Medicinals level, again, less than 1, could be anything. And mercury, less than 0.1, that's still a low level. We want it to be as low as possible. This brand could be okay. They haven't verified exactly the level of heavy metals. Let's see if they've tested for fulvic acid. No, not on this page. Not on that page. Looks like they've got another test here. I'm not sure what that is, but no fulvic acid. Okay, so unfortunately, this brand has not tested for fulvic acid in their Shilajit again. Their heavy metal content could be high or low, but we're not sure. They haven't validated it exactly. So that's 8 different brands that we have looked at in addition to Celsius Medicinals premium grade Shilajit. Most of them have not tested for fulvic acid. As you're probably thinking, it's essential to validate the quality, purity, and the potency of the Shilajit resin that you're taking. It could be much higher in heavy metals metals, it could be really low in fulvic acid. At the end of the day, if you're feeling results from the Shilajit that you're taking, that's fantastic. It's working for you. To make sure that you're getting the maximum bang for your buck, make sure, like I said at the start, that you're checking the brand's third-party lab test results for fulvic acid and for any trace heavy metal contamination. Now that you know what you're looking for, we're going to look at Celsius Medicinals lab test results one last time, and that's the bar you can compare your brand to. We're back on their page. Fulvic acid straight up the top, 76.34%, above what indicates an authentically sourced Shilajit level. That's quite high. You're going to be getting all of those scientifically proven benefits. Heavy metals, arsenic 0.6, lower than most brands. Cadmium 0.02, that was the lowest out of all of them. Lead 0.17, again that's the lowest out of all of them. Most of them had significantly higher lead levels. And mercury less than 0.01 parts per million, that is as low as we can get. That's almost nothing. That is such a small quantity, it's almost not worth testing for. Thanks for watching today, everyone. I hope you found that useful. Subscribe to our channel, join our mailing list for more exclusive information on improving your health and vitality, such as what we've learned today about vetting your brand's third-party lab testing. Make sure to check your brand's lab tests. Take care of yourself, stay vital.